Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Erica Canales. I am the Executive Director for COAS Economic Development Corporation. We are holding today a webinar on USDA's Value Added Producer Grant. And we are looking forward to hearing from our co-hosts, which is Susie Poland and Ken Yearman from USDA. We also have Rose Wilson of Rose Wilson Consulting. And we also have Betsy Castle, who is going to give her experience she's from Fisher Brothers Farm. And we just want to thank our sponsors, Northway Bank and Resilient Building Group, for helping sponsor our webinar today. And as I mentioned, if you can just fill in the chat as you come on as to who you are and where you're from, it'd be great to see how we're represented today. All right. So here are some basics about the Value Added Grant. Who may apply for this program? Basically, any independent producers, agricultural producers, farmer rancher cooperatives, major controlled producer-based business ventures. We'll get into more details later about if you are co-owned with other businesses and what that means for you. These funds are to be used with matching funds for planning activities or working capital related expenses. We're giving some examples here briefly on what a planning activity might include, as well as what your working capital expenses are. Susie, do you have anything to add to this information from USDA? No? All right. Did we lose?
Okay, I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
But I don't have anything to add.
And folks, if you have any questions as we're going along, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will address them. And we'll also have a Q&A section towards the end that we can answer those questions, or if you want to speak up, we can do them that way as well. All right, Susie?
Right. Hi. So grants are awarded via a national competition, meaning all of your applications are going to go to the respective local office of your service area. The RD employee would review that application for completeness. They would review it for eligibility, and they would do a preliminary scoring. And then we send it off to our national office. The national office has absolute decision-making process. So they will re-review it for eligibility, and their scoring is what determines whether or not you are being funded. And then they send it back to us to continue the process via obligating and notification of eligibility and grant closing. The Value Added Producer Grant Program is part of the local agricultural marketing program, which we like to call LAMP. It's from the 2018 Farm Bill. Planning grants, feasibility studies, or business plans, our maximum grant you can receive is up to $75,000. And working capital grants, the maximum you can receive is up to $250,000. This program is a one-to-one match program, meaning if you're getting a $250,000 working capital grant, you need to supply $250,000 worth of match funds. Matching funds must be available and verifiable at the time of the application. Therefore, meaning if you're providing cash for the match, you need to show that you have the amount of match compared to the amount of the grant. You must also be registered in SAM and have a Universal Employee Identification Number, which is UEI. This is important to have at the time of your application. We can't move forward with your application unless you have one of these. And it does take a while to obtain these, this new number, this new universal identification number.
For those of you not familiar, so you might recall what a Duns or Duns and Bradstreet number. This UEI number is replacing that. And having worked, and I'm sure Rose can attest to this too, having worked with a number of people in this system, I highly recommend getting on the phone with them and contacting them and having them walk through the process. It can get technical, and you want the first request going in to be all the right answers. Otherwise, it can be a nightmare trying to do amendments and everything else. So, and it can take minimum 2 weeks. So do this sooner than later if you're going to pursue this.
Right.
So here's some basic general grant planning tips that we've received from some feedback on. This is a little more, this is time consuming. And so we, say, if you want to have the best application, don't wait to the last minute to prepare. Make sure you're capable of handling reimbursement process. Really understand the scoring and performance measure questions. Again, it's a super competitive process, and you really want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward. And that's where Susie or whoever can be there as a resource, or Rose if you are hiring a consultant to help you answer those questions. If you are a new producer, this is probably not the best opportunity because this is about growth. And so you really probably going to want to have baseline data before you even start this. Knowing how, lots of in and outs here, not a bad idea to hire a consultant to assist with the application, especially if it's your first time. So you really kind of know how to hone in on those types of things. As far as CEDC support, if you're here in New Hampshire, or you may have an economic development corporation in your state, since we know we have some people not from New Hampshire or Vermont. If you're pursuing the working capital fund, consider if you need that matching number, you can pursue a lender to see if you can get that loan match, especially if you're looking at some of the larger amount, but you will need to make sure that you have that in hand. We personally have a grant here that can help with paying for a consultant if that's something of interest to you. And it's actually one of our USDA grants that we have. You can also contact us, and we would be happy to help you with the planning grant side. That's kind of be more our strength in this process. At this time, I want to pass it over to Rose, and as a consultant, she has some really great tips as well that we really wanted to share with you.
Hey guys. So I've been working with Susie, preparing and submitting grants for the Value Added Producer program since 2008. And typically, I'm going to walk you through what I do in a sort of an introductory phone call with a prospective grant applicant. So I have several questions that help both you and I understand whether you actually fit the parameters for applying for the Value Added Producer grant. And then if you do, helping understand the parameters within which the application works. So the first thing to start with is just talking about that match. Like the funny thing is everybody gets really excited when they see that there's up to $250,000 available, but you have to show your $250,000 available as match. And originally, it actually primarily had to be a cash match. You were not able to do in kind. We've now, the program has updated itself to the point where you can do up to 50% of your match as in kind. It makes it a bit more of a difficult application. So ideally, I tell people if you can, to streamline both your mental gymnastics and the time that you spend on the application. If you have the ability to do a cash match, it's going to be the easiest thing. If you have a big enough project and you can contribute in kind, then you can consider that and go ahead and do that, as long as the in kind is no more than 50% of your match. And as long as you really document the value of the in kind. So if it's the owner saying their time is going to be involved, the time has to be directly involved in the expenses that you're talking about for the grant application. So your labor is either on the processing line or in the marketing, and you're directly contributing to the expenses that you're discussing. So then the next thing is, once we know that you have the money to support the application, what does this grant actually fund? And it does not fund any infrastructure. So it is not an infrastructure grant. It only funds working capital. So it only funds your operating expenses, and it only funds the operating expenses relating to the processing, marketing, distribution. So no farming activities. You have to have the commodity already produced, and then expenses relating to transforming your commodity into a value-added product is where you can use this grant to offset up to 50% basically of your operating expenses. And again, it's the operating expenses related to the project, meaning the growth or the new product, not for your full business, but for the specific project you're talking about. So if you're going to go from marketing your product from 3 stores to 6 stores, the expenses related with reaching those new 3 stores, but not the expenses related to producing and marketing and distributing the existing volume of product. And do folks have any questions there? I'll pause really quickly. And most folks are on mute, so if you did have a question and I didn't see it, just let me know. The next big question is on ownership. So again, this program is meant to directly support the farmers, and what often happens in production is the person who's making the commodity sells that commodity to some other processor, and the processor is making the margins on the commodity. So the goal of this program is to ensure that the farmers, who are the people producing the commodity, get to benefit from the margins being made at the processing level. So the farmers need to own the value added entity. And that can be really important. We have had issues where, for example, the younger generation owned the farm, the parents owned the processing facility. This happened to be a dairy farm with a creamery. And because the children did not own the creamery and the parents did not own the farm, they were not considered the farm owning the raw commodity from raw commodity to finished product. And so they were ineligible. So the farmer needs to own the raw commodity, and they need to own the processing plant, or the thingy that's processing the finished product. That you can be hiring a co-packer, but that finished product has to be the farm's finished product, and the farm is then selling it to the end user. So just making sure that that makes sense. You can have other owners. Then you become a, this is where we talk about those non-farming co-owners. You can have members of the applicant not all be farmers. It becomes a slightly harder application, and you have to demonstrate that at least 51% of the ownership is owned by farmers. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions there? Okay. And then the next step, so A, you've got your money, B, you own your farm, C, the farm owns the product that it's producing, the value-added product that it's producing. The next really big, and you're not buying capital equipment, the next really big thing to remember is that this grant is meant to help farms at an inflection point of growth. So the government is not going to just fund you to keep doing what you're doing. The government is going to fund you at a period where you're either introducing a new product or expanding your market. And the assumption is that when you're at an inflection period, you have more expenses than you yet have income coming in to cover those expenses. So the government is trying to assist you by defraying those expenses while you embark on this period of growth. So in order to apply, you have to be at a period of growth. And that will determine also what type of applicant you will be. That and the ownership structure will determine if you're going to be applying as a new product, an emerging market, or as a market expansion. Market expansion is the easiest application to go for, especially if you're 100% farmer owned, because market expansion allows you to just actually, if you're asking for 50,000 or less, not even include a business plan. If you're asking for more than 50,000, but you qualify as 100% farm owned, and you're looking at market expansion, not new product, not emerging market, then you need to submit a business plan, but you do not need to submit a feasibility study. If you have to apply as emerging market, then you need both a business plan and a feasibility study. And that's part of why this grant is one of the biggest grants to prepare out of all of the grants that are out there, because it requires a lot of supporting material. Most specifically, it can require up to both a business plan and a feasibility study. So you need to prepare for that. And that's why we typically say, yeah, if you can start working on this year's application with an estimate of actually submitting for next year, that's more likely if you don't already have a business plan and a feasibility. If you're getting started from scratch, it's going to possibly take you a little while. But then just make sure that your business plan and the feasibility study relate to this new product or new market. And then you really need to verify that you can demonstrate commitments. The other thing that the grant funders really look for with this particular grant is strong demonstration that whatever you say is actually going to be able to come to fruition. And so you really want actual letters of commitment from prospective, not current buyers, and you want them to quantify in dollars and quantities how much they expect to buy from you in the future. And it's a dance that you have to do, because you're trying to get people to commit to something and they technically can't already be a customer of yours, but that's what's going to help you score on this grant. Let me think. Those are the big things that I try to highlight for folks. Do folks have any questions? And then I'll turn it back to Susie to clean up anything I said that was incorrect.
Susie, anything to add?
No, that was a really, really good rundown of the application process and the information that needs to be looked at in the application and the information that needs to be provided. It is a very, very detailed application that is needed for funding, specifically when it comes to the marketing and where the matching funds are coming from and how that is going to be used in your project. And one of the things that Rose had stated regarding the support letters and being a new applicant for market expansion, again, we don't, if you have a current applicant who wants to provide a support letter, they need to verify that they will be providing or purchasing additional above and beyond what they're currently buying. And be able to provide verification of that. What else did we talk about? Yeah, I think Rose did a really good job. I'm looking at the information in the toolkit for the 51% of the ownership is a key being agricultural producer, and they have to actually do the day-to-day activity of the farming from the production of the raw commodity that you're going to be using in your value-added product. So I think that's all I need to add.
Great. All right.
I think the one thing I would tie on to that is that for farms who are buying in other products, for example, we see this a fair bit with the maple industry. 51% of the raw commodity for the project must also be coming from your farm. So if you happen to buy in more raw commodity than 51%, you have to then limit the project to either a specific product line of yours or something that enables the project to show that at least 51% of the commodity in the project is coming from your farm. So for example, sometimes with vineyards, the vineyards have been buying in a lot of grapes, especially up in the Northeast, because we don't have very well-established grapevines yet. They might limit their project to be a house wine, that particular line of wine is made directly with their grapes, even though their operation sources a lot of other grapes, and their other lines of wine have a majority of other people's product and a little bit of their grapes in it. We just cannot include any of those products in this project. And where that gets frustrating to people is that, of course, it limits, the smaller the project, the smaller the likelihood that you might actually get that whole 250,000. But you want to have a strong application. You do not want to be kicked out because of sort of logistical aspects like that. So it's better to ask for a smaller project and what you need and have a project that's actually going to pass muster.
That's correct. Yep.
Rose, do you want to go over the planning grant opportunity?
Sure. And Susie will pop in too. We don't have that many folks who want to apply for planning. Everybody seems to want the operating capital grant, but there are times when the planning grant is a good idea. And it's also really important that you don't mix and match things that technically are funded through the planning grant. You do not want to ask for them in a working capital grant, because they will get your grant. I call it kicked out. There's probably a better term for it, but if you're asking for planning grant activities, they have to go in a planning grant. There's no kind of combined grant application.
Right.
So
yeah,
anytime, yeah.
A planning grant is a planning grant, and a working capital grant is a working capital grant, and there's no gray area.
And where that specifically comes into play, where people tend to create gray area often, is within the marketing questions, where they're like, oh, I'm going to do a brand redesign. No, brand redesign is a planning activity. Printing and reproduction of the material that you've developed that is branded material, that's an operating capital. But anything that's sort of the think tank side of it, that exercise, the exercise of developing it for future use, is a planning grant activity.
These are all very good examples of what are eligible as well. Yes.
Susie, do you have any other ones that you can speak of that you've seen?
The marketing and the planning, the development, we have seen, I can't think of what the technical word of it, where they were looking to expand their organization to produce a new product, those types of things.
And again,
merging organizations, that's what it's called.
And again, these are the planning grant opportunity. If you need assistance with this, and you're here in the North Country in New Hampshire, CDC can definitely help get you in the right direction and or connect you with folks like Rose, depending on what your focus and needs are.
Right. These again, these are a tough application. It does take a while to complete these applications, and we do like them to be very detailed. So we do recommend that you get assistance with completing these applications if you're able to.
And if you say you don't make this year's grant process, use this growing season to really use this webinar as thinking about it as you go through to see, this is an annual grant. So don't stress if you can't make it in this one, but use this information that we're giving you today to think and plan for the future, if you don't have all your ducks in a row right away. This was just sorry for all the verbiage, but I thought it would be a great opportunity to see across the US some of the other project examples that have been approved, whether it's beef, poultry, nuts, fruit, vegetables. You can kind of get a sense of what people have asked for and what their project expectations were through those efforts, just to kind of, sometimes it helps to see what else has gotten through and has been considered, of what they've wanted to fund on the scoring. So, and again, this is going to be recorded. It's also going to be posted on our YouTube site. And that way, don't stress if you can't get all the information down at once today. Anybody have any questions as we're going along here? All right. Haven't seen any in the chat, so.
This is Rose. I'm just gonna, before we pop into Becky, and Becky's gonna give us a great description of her application. The one thing, just from a general grant perspective, so that people understand, if you're new to grant applications, and if you're a seasoned grant applicant, really absolutely make sure if you do not get funded the first go round, that you don't take it personally, and that you absolutely check in with the funders to get your score sheet and your grant review back so that you can see where you scored well and where they recommend improvements. And the wonderful thing about the Value Added Producer grant, because it is not capital infrastructure oriented, it's a operating grant, and as long as you're growing each year, it's still going to be valuable to you. So you can basically just work on that grant application and fine tune it each year and fine tune it each year until finally you make the cut. So that's a typical strategy with most grants. The average grant, most average applicants on a national scale will not get funded. 50% of applicants will not get funded in their first application to any grant. The funders like to generate a relationship with you. They like to tell you how to improve your application. So just the biggest issue I find with folks when they apply for grants is that they do it as a one-off. They write the grant and then they don't do the follow-up and they get discouraged, and that puts all of that work into one of those futile scenarios where if you begin to just say, I can reapply for this next year, as long as you're not applying for a time-sensitive project, do that follow-up. It's just like a sales call and cultivating a sales relationship. You want to do the reach, make your outreach, make your case. If they didn't accept it on the first go round, find out what you could do to make your pitch better and just continue pitching it. That was just my plug there.
No, great points. I appreciate that's nice extra feedback. All right. Well, at this time, I want folks to meet Becky Castle, who was kind enough to join us today. She is one of our local recipients of this grant, and I figured some peer-to-peer sharing here would be super helpful. So take it away, Becky.
All right, well, thanks so much. I actually worked with both Susie and Rose. Rose helped me develop my proposal, and then Susie took over from somebody named Elijah as the administrator of my grant. So I want to underscore a couple of things that Rose said. One is the letters of support. It's really important, as she mentioned, to show growth in purchasing and try to get your letters of support to be as specific as possible. Like last year, we bought, $20,000 of product. This year, we anticipate buying $70,000 worth of product. So the letters of support are really important. And I actually wrote the letters of support for the people that I asked for the letters from. So it was as easy as getting them to agree to sign the letter, but then I drafted it and then they reviewed it and edited it and made sure they felt comfortable with it. That way it makes it much easier for the person that's providing the letter of support to do it, and it doesn't take time out of their day. But the relationships that you have with your buyers or prospective buyers, so you should be able to think about what they would put in a letter and then draft it for them. In addition to the letters of support from purchasers, you also are going to need letters of support from suppliers. So we had letters of support from, I think, 3 or 4 different entities. The company that provides us honey, the company that provides us mix, the company that provides us packaging materials, and then another company that provided us packaging materials. And I asked for those letters at the beginning of, like, when I started to develop the proposal, but I actually didn't send them the letters until I had finished my budget, because the letters from the suppliers have to say, let's say I know I'm going to need to buy $20,000 worth of packaging from XYZ packaging company. The letter of support from, or commitment from the packaging company has to say that they're capable, they have enough supply to provide me with $20,000 worth of packaging that I need to do my, implement my grant. So if you plan on applying for this, definitely talk at the very beginning of the process with both your suppliers and also your customers so that you can get those letters of support. I think that this proposal is one of the more complicated proposals I've ever worked on. My background, I've actually worked in fundraising and partnership development for the last 25 years. And I have done USAID proposals and Gates Foundation's proposals and proposals for the UK government and so many other types of funders in between. This is a super detailed proposal. So when I first started it, I didn't understand how detailed it had to be. And fortunately, Rose was able to provide me guidance. So if I said, so my grant was for market expansion and funding for 3 different areas of working capital. So one was production, the second area was marketing, and the third area was distribution. And the things that I got funded in each area, so production, it funded staffing and packaging materials, and also inputs, so cream, honey, ingredients. In the marketing area, it funded a new role, so a marketing manager. It funded website revisions that we needed to expand our market, and then also Google Ads. And then the third area, distribution, it funded a small portion of a staff person that works on distribution. But when my proposal said, like, let's say I'm going to create, 40,000 new customers with this money, I had to show where every single customer was coming from. So like, online orders, it didn't matter what my current existing online customers were. I had to show where my new customers were going to come from and how many new customers that would be. So that was online. And for like the retail partnerships, I think I said I was going to add like 60 new retail partnerships. I had to show like, okay, you know, like 5 of these are going to be $12,000 a year customers, 10 are going to be, you know, $7,000 a year customers, and 25 are going to be, you know, $4,000 a year customers. And of that revenue, you know, 20% is going to be repeat customers and 80% will be new customers. And then, you know, follow that to the logical conclusion of how many customers that would create. So it was like super detailed. I can't underscore how detailed it was. And then the other piece of it is in your, the area of the project, like your working plan, you need to show that you have the right staffing in place. So I had letters of commitment from both my husband and me as the producers. And then I also had letters of commitment from the various staff people that were currently working for us. And then I think we had 2 open positions that were going to be funded by the grant. So I included position descriptions, and I also did benchmarking around like what those people would cost. Pretty much for any cost that you include in your budget, you need to have a justification. So justification would be like a previous invoice from that vendor, benchmarking from the internet on staffing costs for your particular area. But basically you have to show justification for any cost that you include. The other thing that I would tell you, even if you don't apply this year, I would encourage you to apply for your SAM.gov registration now. It can take a while and you can have hiccups in the process. So last year, when we were trying to finalize, or 2 years ago, when we were trying to finalize our SAM.gov registration, we can't receive US Postal Service mail at our farm. And so it added like a month and a half to the process. And I was worried that we weren't going to get our SAM.gov before we had to submit the proposal. A lot of states have procurement experts that are funded by the state. So Vermont has a woman named Brenda Plastridge, and she actually worked with me to finalize and work out the kinks and the problems I was having with SAM.gov. And I would imagine New Hampshire has like a US government procurement expert that can help you, or, you know, other states probably have something similar. The last thing aside from the proposal process is the reimbursement process. I would say each time I did a reimbursement, it took me about a day of time to compile the information. Because, you know, it's a US government grant, so you have to show like every detail. So for any, as an example, for any like purchase of online ads, I had to show the receipt, and then I had to show if I paid it with a credit card, I had to show that that credit card, you know, the credit card I used to pay had been paid in that amount during the period that I was requesting the reimbursement for. For staff time, I had to show the ACH payments had left my bank account, that I had already expended the money. I did get used to it, so it got a lot easier, but it is a pretty time-consuming process to do the reimbursement. And I think those are the highlights. But definitely consider applying either now or in the future. It is an amazing opportunity. We applied for market expansion and we grew our ice cream business by 90% during the grant period, which I think is really impressive. So it is like a key grant in like sort of turning our business or bringing it to that next step.
Great. Thanks, Becky. That was really informative. And Susie added on the chat, Danielle Bishop is a procurement counselor for here in New Hampshire, and her number's on the chat. Yeah, I think it's always great to hear from somebody who's going to be in the same shoes. So thank you, Betsy. Does anybody have any specific questions for and I apologize, this should say Betsy and not Becky, correct?
No, my name is Becky.
Okay, I don't know why I kept getting that confused, so I apologize.
No worries.
Does anybody online have questions for Becky? got somebody who's been through the process. Nothing specific? That's okay. All right. All right, Susie.
Unmute me. Okay, so this is just the contact information for the staff here at Rural Development who works with the Value Added Producer Grant Program. I am the business program specialist who will be receiving your applications when they come in, which can be submitted to us via grants.gov or regular mail, express mail, or email. Email is actually the preferred method that we like to see applications come through. We do ask that if you're sending multiple applications, multiple emails with your application, that the very first email you submit to us states, this is email 1 of 7 for the Value Added Producer Grant project for the name of your organization. So we can make sure that we get all of the emails and we don't miss any. We could send you something saying, okay, you said you were going to send us 7, we only got 5. So that's very helpful. I'm Susan Poland. I'm the business program specialist. My contact is listed here. Kenneth Yearman, he is our business programs director. And you can reach Ken at the Montpelier office. Both of us are in Montpelier. And yeah, if you have any questions throughout the process, please contact us and we'll be happy to assist you in any way that we can. And we are able to do zip files and we can do Google Docs, but we do recommend that if you're sending it via email that you contact us and let us know how many emails are being submitted. We do look forward to assisting you and we hope that you apply.
Yeah, and for those of you that aren't from New England,
Yes.
you definitely Google who your regional person is to contact directly, because these folks are for New England specifically.
Right.
And just for upcoming presentations that might be relatable, our cooperative extension is hosting an in-person meeting this weekend. The April 27th and May 4th one, those are actually in the via Zoom. I thought they would be helpful just because they talk about value added, even though they're focused on mushrooms. You could probably take a thing or two from that information, and I can provide the contact information to Will at that office if needed. And I just want to say thank you to our panelists for giving their amazing tips and experience here. And we look forward to any and all of you pursuing either the working capital or the planning grants, and however we can be of assistance to you to make that happen. We want to see you have success at that. So again, thank you everyone for participating, and we will have this, since it's recorded, we will post this on our YouTube channel. And I will also, for those of you that did pre-register, I will send those links out to you via email following this meeting. So thank you everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.